So someone brought an actual interesting question to me. It's very rare when we actually get very interesting questions because I feel like we've discussed everything regarding Ice and Fire already. So what happens after, 12 to 14 years of no new books? But
yes.
So someone hit me up. Shout out to the Communist. Interesting name. And he had a question about Jaceres Targaryen, Rhaenyra's son. The question is he a bastard? Is he not a bastard? Did Viserys or Laenor, quote-unquote, legitimize him? And how does the bastard legitimization work? So that's an interesting question because we all know, everyone knows that he kind of is. But at the same time, Laenor and Viserys acknowledged him. So technically, he's legitimate. But also not really, because there was no, legitimization, decree, like we saw in Game of Thrones when Tommen declared Ramsay a Bolton.
Right, and we're talking clearly show continuity, because obviously in book continuity we have no confirmation one way or the other. Jace could be trueborn, he could be a bastard. We don't know in the book. We're talking in the show, what is Jace's status?
100%.
Yes. Well, yeah, I mean, he has to be an actual bastard. I mean, because there's been no decree legitimizing him. Now, obviously, who's actually married and who's a bastard and things like that. These are human constructs. It doesn't change who you are if your parents were married or not. It makes no fucking difference. Today, I think 60% of Swedes, for example, are born out of wedlock. We wouldn't think of Swedes having a bad nature, but in the world of Ice and Fire, they do believe bastards have a different nature. They believe that lustful sex produces emotional individuals, while good old boring married passionless sex that one has for duty in a Stannis fashion, it would create a stable, sane kind of individual. So, and weirdly in the source material, in Fire and Blood, there's, discussions of Rhaenyra believing that the nature of bastards is bad. And this is mainly explored in Dunk and Egg. Dunk and Egg actually is when we get the real discussions on how Westerosi really feel about bastards and what it means, because Daemon Blackfyre comes up. But no, Jace is a bastard, but he's secretly a bastard because publicly, legally, he's not a bastard. It's an interesting situation because Rhaenyra is the queen. She could legitimize him at any time.
But that would first require acknowledging that he was first.
Was in the first place. Right. And then you'd get into the whole Blackfyre rebellion kind of issue. Would people even accept it? And this is explored in Dunk and Egg. Some people accept that Daemon Blackfyre was legitimized, but everyone's that doesn't matter. His nature is still poor, because he's a bastard, and so we shouldn't support him because he was born and he was conceived in passion.
Real quick, for the people who have not read the books or don't know much about the whole Blackfyre rebellion, it is a situation that takes place about, I want to say, a little less than 100 years after House of the Dragon, where a future Targaryen king has a bunch of bastards, and I think it was on his deathbed, he legitimizes all of them, and it causes several conflicts over the course of the entire history of the continent, unified Westeros.
And he gives Daemon Blackfyre the sword of the king, making it seem like perhaps he was making him the heir, because that sword is kind of an important part of, at various moments in history, of establishing who the heir is. But prior to the Blackfyre Rebellion, the sword disappears after that. So, the Blackfyres have it.
In regard to the conversation about Jace, is he a bastard or not? Because, that's a tricky question, and I love the question, and I'll throw it to the audience as well. Because, in the show, he is. We know that. The show confirms it. And actually, let me throw something at you right now, because I swear I sent you the tweet. The tweet's right there.
But you're right in that the concept of being a bastard is a social construct, and since the majority of society believes that he's trueborn, then because socially he's trueborn, right? Like, you're talking a social construct in the first place, so it's weird to have like a secret idea about a social construct, like it's almost contradictory. Right? Like this imagined thing which bastardy, which is this imagined, it's a social construct that's imagined and in the mind of people. Like, it doesn't actually exist. It's not like a rock or a tree that exists. Like, bastardy is a concept believed by people collectively. But if everybody collectively believes you're not a bastard, then it's an interesting contradiction.
It also would have been a very interesting conversation and a point to bring up during the show, giving Jace another like really cool story in the show of like, okay, they just legitimize me. Well, then that would require me having to admit that you are a bastard, which that brings up complications, right, and so on and so forth. What if she?
Okay, then legitimize me in private. Well, okay,
but. Like, does it mean anything if it's in private and not open? Like how in Dunk and Egg, Dunk is supposedly a knight, but no one can vouch for him. You kind of need witnesses.
This is the whole thing about secret marriages. Like, what's the point of a private secret marriage? Like, well, there's none. Like, the whole point of marriage is to publicly tell people that you are connecting yourself to somebody else.
Exactly.
Like, a private secret marriage is meaningless. It's a social construct. This is actually my problem with the Rhaegar Lyanna marriage. Like, why would you be secretly getting married to somebody? That makes no sense. What good does that do? Oh, it does no good to anyone.
Exactly. You need witnesses.
I suppose if you believe in like holy matrimony, like say he like Rhaegar was a firm believer in the seven gods and like wanted the father and the mother and the crone to smile upon him or something. Like, in that sense, marriage might mean something, but for the most part, marriage is a social contract for like to tell everybody that this is you're bonding with this person. This is why you invite your friends and family to a marriage. Like, everybody important in your life comes to your marriage because you're socially saying, I'm connecting myself to this person. But anyway.
By the way, earlier you mentioned how we're only talking about the show, not the books. Well, actually, I sent you on Discord message, if you scroll up a bit, and it's a clip from George. Feel free to take a listen.
Rhaenyra's relationship with Harwin Strong, she had 3 children by him, but we never even... we never see them get together for the first time or kiss. We never have a scene when they first slept with each other. We don't know exactly what has happened and how he felt about that and how Laenor felt about him. There's a whole story there. There's at least a novella, maybe a novel, but we simply did not have the time to tell it. And it did not fit the format of my history book. But it's a story, and I would love to do that.
Well, this is him in an interview, okay, and I understand that it's also just a clip. There's also context around it, but he seems to be talking primarily about the show because he actually said "we" in there, and the fire and blood part seems kind of tacked on. But still, even accepting that he's talking about fire and blood, it doesn't matter. Like, what George says in an interview, like, doesn't fucking matter. Like, clearly, factually, like, he wrote a story where everything is ambiguous, like, and that's the story. I mean, that's the whole point of having Mushroom and Septon Eustace and the Maester. So even if he sits there and says like that they're bastards, like, no, like, that's not what the text says. The text says something.
I know you're going to get this. I know you're going to get flack for this. So I know what's going to because someone has thrown this to you before, and I'm sure you didn't see it. They said to you one time in the comments, and I'm sure someone's going to say it again. Preston, do you really need super sleuth Ned Stark to come in and do the whole black of hair?
But this is the whole thing. Like, we don't know Harwin's, like, what Harwin looks like. So you can't just like, he's not actually around her, and she's also around Kristen Cole, and there's Laenor and all sorts of things. I mean, it's supposed to be ambiguous. It's supposed to be a situation where you never know. Like, that's the point of it. That's the entire point of the multiple perspectives of Mushroom, Septon Eustace, and the Maester. I don't know. It's so, I mean, we can see the entire thing, but it doesn't matter. Like, that's what the text says. Like, that's what he wrote.
But haven't you admitted that George makes mistakes all the time and contradicts himself?
All the time. All the time, George contradicts himself and says weird shit.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just odd. I don't know. But he's purposely writing an ambiguous story that you're supposed to debate. Like, looking for the answers is defeating the point. Is missing the point.